Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in our series Web-Based Drawing Apps. In this one, what I would like to teach you is how to make a very simple, very easy drawing app for vector shapes. So we're here in this one, we're going to be using the click and drag metaphor to create shapes. Like for example, I'm going to be drawing here a line, and I'm going to change colors, and I'm going to draw P camp here, and I'm drawing it with some lines, but at the same time I am going to also change to a rectangle, and I'm going to change to a rectangle here, and that's going to be my P cap. Okay. And as in the previous one, we're going to have the possibility of erasing things like this. All right. So the beauty of this one is that I'm going to teach you a method to have both temporary geometry, like for example, you saw me click and dragging and shapes moving, while at the same time also having permanence. So at some point, when you release your mouse, things become fixed the pixels become fixed in the background, and then you can start manipulating them at the pixel level as if it was Photoshop. So it's going to be a really interesting way of having the best of both worlds. So I hope you're excited. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be super simple to do as well. So let's dive in. All right, so in the previous video in this series, what I was teaching you was how to create a very simple drawing application where we follow more like the Photoshop metaphor of a continuous brush that is constantly drawing on top of the pixels of a canvas, right? So in this video, what I would like to try is to switch the model and perhaps go more towards a model where the interaction is more click and drag based. And when instead of continuously drawing, like you typically do in Photoshop with a brush, what you do is something closer to what you do in vector-based software drawing programs, like for example, Illustrator, where when you say, I'm going to create a shape of a rectangle, what you do is you click, and then the shape starts showing up as you move and click and drag. And the moment you let your mouse go, then the shape becomes fixed on the canvas. And I can choose a different shape, and then the shape just like grows. And then what I do is modeling by basically clicking and dragging one-off instances of shapes as opposed to this continuous brush mode. All right. So what I would like to do is I would like to do that. If you haven't seen my previous video, I suggest you do it. There's going to be a link to that video popping up as a card here on the top left corner somewhere, and then there will be a link to that video also in the description of this one, okay? Because we're going to build on top of that example. So in that example, which I am calling drawing click and drag, right now we're going to start, for the purpose of this video, we're going to start with the previous example, the Photoshop-like, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change a few things so that we can follow that click and drag metaphor, all right? Now, what am I going to change? Well, the first thing is, before we start anything, I just want you to notice how, because the way we're drawing shapes is drawing them continuously whenever the mouse is pressed, I would like to, first of all, deactivate this and then start working with something that still doesn't do that continuous brushing, all right? And then the next thing that I'm going to need is I'm going to need to figure out a way to detect when the user clicked on the canvas, when the user is dragging the canvas around the canvas, and when the user released the finger from the mouse button, and then take actions accordingly depending on those episodes of the drawing story. I don't know how to explain this, all right? So the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to make sure that I know and I can capture when the user clicks and when the user releases the finger from the mouse, right? Thankfully, P5.js is also very useful in that sense. And if we go to the reference, we can see that there are, for mouse events, there's a lot of functions that I can use. So we've already seen in the previous video the mouse pressed one. So I think this is going to be the one that I'm going to use to figure out when the mouse is clicked. And there's another one specifically that is called mouse release, which is also very convenient because this is the one that I will be able to use to figure out when the mouse is released. Okay, so let's prototype that. So I'm just not going to focus on the drawing too much right now. What I'm going to focus is on capturing mouse events. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a function here called mouse pressed. All right, and then I'm going to press to the I'm going to type to the console console log mouse pressed at mouse X and mouse Y. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing for mouse release. Mouse released, and then console log mouse release at those coordinates. Okay, so look at what's going to happen. I'm going to click all the way here at the top right corner, and you see what showed up in my console. I'm dragging right now, and the moment I release, all right, you can see that those messages showed up in my console. Okay, so right now I have a very nice method to figure out when the mouse was pressed and when it was released. So when I want the shape to show up on the screen is whenever I am releasing the mouse. That's when I want to fix my shape, right? So what I could do here is, well, if I know that that's when I'm releasing the mouse, what I could do here is I could say I'm going to draw a rectangle from X coordinates to whatever other coordinates the moment I release my mouse. However, in mouse release, I actually don't have information about where did I click the mouse before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just basically going to create a variable here that I'm going to call in the global scope that I'm going to call last clicked. And that variable, I'm going to initialize it to an object that is going to be two coordinates. One, the X coordinate that I'm going to initialize to 0, and a Y coordinate that I'm also going to initialize to 0. Okay? And then when I press my mouse, what I'm going to do is maybe I keep that, maybe I don't keep it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the two coordinates of my last clicked event. All right? So now here see what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a console log to say mouse was previously clicked on, and then last clicked and last click. All right, but I'm going to do that only when I release my mouse. So look at me, I'm going to click here, I am dragging, and then when I release, you can see that I print the mouse was previously clicked here and is now released here. What that means is that the mouse released function now has knowledge of where the user clicked in the first place, because when the user clicked first place, we store that as a variable, as a global variable in my program. All right. So what that means is that now here, I could do a little bit of calculation to figure out how to draw that rectangle. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to push so that I save all my styles and my transformations, and I'm going to push and pop. Push and pop are basically a way in P5 to say whatever styles, whatever drawings, whatever you have going on, just save those to memory. I'm going to make some changes, and then whenever I pop, forget about the changes that I've done, bring however the state was back to the overall drawing state. So what I'm going to do here is, to make my life a little easier, I'm going to change the way rectangles are drawn in P5 from, if you remember, we used to draw them from the top left corner. So I'm going to use the corners, and I'm going to, so that I can use in rectangle, actually, let me stop this. Let me show you why I'm doing this. So if I say rectangle, right, what I want to draw a rectangle is from the coordinates last click, right, to whatever my mouse is right now. So let me show you. If I do that, you can see that Oh, why is this not working? Oh, it is working. Yes. So look what's happening. So if I use mouse X and mouse Y, these are the width and the height of the rectangle, and that should be, instead of mouse X and mouse Y, it should be mouse X minus last click blah blah blah, and this should be mouse Y minus last click dot Y. And then, but as you can see, the rectangle is being drawn from the center because I said that before. All right. All right. Beautiful. Okay, so I think this is working. All right. But we are kind of drawing these rectangles without actually having intermediate information or an image of what the rectangle is looking like as I am drawing it. So you could say, well, then why don't we go back to the continuous effect? Why don't we just say here, I'm going to copy this rectangle, right? And I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to say, if you're drawing a square, just draw it like this, right? So I'm going to switch to rectangle, and then I'm going to switch to square, and then you can see that, actually, let me make the color more transparent, okay? And let me, all right, so you can see that I am kind of moving my rectangle around, but because because the effect of my drawing is cumulatively, because I'm drawing continuously, it doesn't delete what I had before. One solution to that could be, well, maybe I want to refresh the background every time I draw. If I do that, you can see that now I can drag my rectangle, because every single frame I am drawing everything that was drawn before, and I'm drawing my new shape, one single shape, right? But then I let go and everything disappears because I am still cleaning the background, all right? Okay, this is very messy. So how do I then make sure that I have both this idea of a temporary shape that is showing up on the screen and that is not continuously being added to the pixels in the canvas, while at the same time, whenever I let go, I make sure that that shape stays there and I can keep drawing on top of that. So for that, I'm going to need to introduce you to a new concept. The technique that we're going to follow is a technique that I'm going to call a hybrid canvas, all right? I don't know that this is a standard term, maybe I just made it up, but the idea is that what we want is to try to get the best out of both worlds. A world where whatever we draw just stays there as pixels forever, and a world where whatever we draw is just temporary, it's just a one-off, it just happens in the frame, but it doesn't have a permanent effect on our canvas. And the idea is to try to combine them both. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to work with two different places where we're going to draw things. So we're going to imagine that our P5 canvas is made up of two layers. One layer is going to be a layer where everything that we draw stays there always forever as pixels, and that is going to be following that previous Photoshop metaphor, a canvas where I don't change anything and I don't clear the background every time I refresh the canvas. What I'm going to call this is, I'm going to call this a graphic buffer, or in other words, a place where I can draw things. And I'm going to call this the buffer that I use for permanent pixels, all right? And then what I'm going to imagine is that on top of that, I am using a second graphic buffer, one where everything that I draw has the lifespan of just one frame, and it just gets regenerated and deleted every frame, right? So what that means is that that is the one buffer that I will be using to draw anything that is temporary, like my cursor, like some shape that still has not been defined. And whenever I am done defining something temporarily and I want to fix it, what I will do is I will stop drawing this. Sorry for that. I will stop drawing this shape here on the frame buffer, and I will move it and draw it on top of the pixel buffer. All right. And then everything that I will be always seeing in my P5 canvas is going to be the aggregation of both. It's going to be the buffer where I'm using all my pixels and I'm leaving them there forever on the background. And then on top of that, I'm going to be drawing with the other buffer, the one that is containing only temporary shapes and which gets clear and redrawn every single frame of the life of my application. Okay, so let me show you how we are going to do this. If we go to the P5 reference and I search for rendering, what you're going to see is that in rendering we have a few options to be more advanced in how do we strategize the things that we draw on the canvas. So it turns out that in rendering we have this function called create graphics, and create graphics, what it does is that returns a new graphic object, and this graphic object is an object that I can use to basically draw things in a way that they will be drawn to that buffer but not on the canvas that I'm showing right now. Imagine as if your P5.js canvas was a notebook and where you can draw on and then things will show up immediately. But imagine if you had another notebook that was not showing up on your screen where you could just go and say, oh, I'm going to draw to this one, but not going to show you. I'm going to draw to this one, but I'm not going to show you. And then every here and then what you can do is you can bring this back, make a copy, and then put it back in the background. That is going to be a little bit of the metaphor here. So what this means is that if I go to my app again, I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, whenever I create my my sketch, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to define something that I'm going to call BG or background. All right. And background is going to be a create graphics. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create in BG, I'm going to store a graphic buffer that I'm going to call BG for background. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw to that background. So in the graphics buffer, actually, let me rename this. I'm going to call this buffer. Okay. I'm going to call this buffer. All right. Yes. So I'm going to clear the background and I'm going to make it purely white. Okay. So then, and then you can do a lot of things. Like, for example, you can say, I'm going to draw an ellipse from, I don't know, 100, 100 to 50 and 50. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. You can do this anytime in whatever those coordinates are. All right. What you can see is that if I save, nothing is showing up here because my buffer, again, imagine like a canvas in somewhere in memory that you're drawing, but it's not showing up. So then how could I bring it and show it up? Something that you can do is you can say in the main draw function, you can use the image function to take a snapshot of that buffer that is somewhere in memory, take all those pixels as if they were an image, and then just draw them on the screen. If we do that, you can see that this circle here and this square are the circle and the square that I did draw in that memory buffer at the beginning, and that I'm just simply rendering on my main canvas as a background image. Okay? Now, here's the beauty of this. Let me turn all of this back on again. If I do this and I now, sorry, I'm going to take off the background. Yes. And then if I switch to drawing with squares, you can see that I am drawing on top of that background image, and it's doing nothing with the background image. It's not moving the circles or it's not drawing on top of them. They're not going anywhere. Okay. But something that I could do is, well, so how do I make my shapes now permanent? Well, what I want to do is whenever I release my mouse, I want to take that shape that I just drew on the screen and I want to make it permanent. Permanent means I would like to switch it from where I'm drawing it here to make it part of the buffer that is going to be always there. Make it part of this, move it from this temporary rendering place to this background buffer where the pixels are permanent forever, right? So something that I can do is I can pretty much copy this and say, whenever the mouse is released, okay, whenever the mouse is released, take and draw all this stuff. But instead of drawing it, just simply drawing it, what I want you to do is I want to draw it in the buffer, not just on the P5 canvas. So what I need to do here is I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to say buffer has no stroke, buffer has no fill color. I'm going to draw a circle to the buffer. I'm going to draw a rectangle to the buffer. I'm going to change the fill color to the buffer and then just do all the modifications, but instead of here, making them on the buffer. So check out what's happening right now. I'm going to click and drag, I'm going to click and drag, all right? And then this rectangle that is showing right now is the one that is in the main draw, but then as soon as I let go, oop, as soon as I let go, oh yeah, because this should not be here. If mouse is pressed, that should not be there, okay? Sorry, this is the perils of copy pasting. Copy pasting never works well. Okay, so I'm going to switch to square, and then as I let go, boom, those pixels now become part of the buffer. And if I draw another one, because this, as soon as I let go, mouse release kicks in and one single rectangle gets drawn to the buffer, and then the buffer is, which becomes an image, it becomes a Photoshop stamp, then that buffer is drawn as the background of my main canvas as an image, okay? So that is the technique of using a buffer or an offline memory place where we can draw pixels and then we can draw them as a background image on our canvas. And then on top of that, drawing whatever temporary geometry we want here that gets wiped out in the next frame whenever we draw with the background buffer on top. Okay, so is the circle working? So let me check. Oh, the circle is not working. Well, I can drag, but it's not dragging. So because I'm not doing the last click, so I'm going to draw an ellipse here. And then the ellipse should have size like this. Is that correct? That's not gonna work, I think. So let me see if this works. So, oops, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. Yes. Okay, let me save this. Circle, boom. Yeah, well, let's fix first. Yeah, so that should be, actually that should be, because it is the width is actually 2 times this, and this is actually 2 times this. All right, so now, yes, we have an ellipse that is working well. And then what I need to do is I need to copy and paste this in the code that stamps that ellipse in the background buffer. Okay, beautiful. And then I switch to squares. All right, I should switch to ellipses and rectangles. Okay, for example, lines, we haven't done lines. So can we do lines? Absolutely. For shapes, else if the key that I'm pressing is the L key, then I'm going to draw a line. All right. Then here, I'm going to add another case. Else if the shape is the line, then I do actually want a stroke, which is going to be the shape color. All right. I do want a stroke weight. Oh, I want a stroke weight, which is going to be the value of shape size. I'm going to make a very hefty shape size, all right? And then I am going to draw a line from wherever I clicked last time to wherever my mouse is, all right? So I'm going to press L, I'm going to press L here, and you can see that I'm drawing a line from one place to the other. And then when I let go, what I need to do is I need to add this exact same code, but I need to add it here and I need to make sure that I change this to the buffer. Okay, fantastic. So ellipse, rectangle, and then a line that becomes permanent and permanent and permanent and permanent. And whoo, this is very awesome. Whoa! All right. And the beauty of this is that I can still delete things. Actually, because deleting should be a continuous effect, what I want to do is in deleting in the main frame, I want to do that from the buffer. So I'm going to change this to the buffer, and then the one off here is unnecessary. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to this, a long line, and then delete. Oopsies. Delete should be what? No stroke, buffer, no stroke. Yep, and then that, and deleting, yes, and the line, and the ellipse, the square, and the circle. All right, fantastic. So I think it's working. So as you can see, this idea, the idea of a buffer with where we can draw things, put them in the background, and then elements that we draw dynamically and we erase every frame is one that is actually quite helpful to have both permanent and transient effects in our drawing applications. And it's one that is very good if we want to maintain these two levels. This idea of, well, let me remove this. Why? I don't know why we have this anymore. If we want to maintain those two levels, the level of the permanent effects of my drawings and a different layer with UI elements, interaction elements, feedback elements, whatever that looks like, okay? All right, fantastic. I think actually I'm feeling in the mood of writing, making another video where we do another example of what you're seeing here, but one that is perhaps a bit more fun and artistic than just drawing circles and rectangles. So let me see if we can come up with something like that. Okay, let's do that. Let's do another video where we're just going to do an example of this. All right. Thank you very much. If you did like this video, say hi, join the Discord, leave a comment, like the video, all that stuff. Okay, see you on the next video. We're going to make a cool example. Bye-bye.